John wants to say a couple of words.
That's it. That's your cover.
All right, I'll try to be shorter than Harmon. Who got the newsletter this month? Who got multiple copies of it?
We like them all.
Thank you. I have been using Gmail, and there was 679 email addresses it goes out to. This month, when I sent it, I sent it, and then it bounced and said, nope, you're not sending mass emails through Gmail. And I tried breaking it down into smaller groups, and I don't think those went through either, because I put test emails in. I had to go to a service, MailChimp, and they didn't tell me that the first time when I uploaded the list, you gotta have this in exact. So I sent it, and then it goes, there were so many bounces, I couldn't tell which. I had to edit every single damn email, which I think there's 485, something like that, unique ones in there. And I apologize for this, but there's some people in this room, and I won't point out anybody, who changes their email more often than I change my socks. And that's a pain to keep up with. And usually if you bounce 2 months in a row, I just take you off the list. Who did not get it, who wants it?
You done good.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. And a long time ago, because I was in such a rush to get the newsletter out, I stripped the emails out and put them in a list by themselves, and then I added some to it for the next month, and now they're completely divorced. I don't know who's who on that list, and I can't put them back. We're going to get together this year. We're going to try and straighten it out so I can match everybody up. There's a few people that send me something to the effect that, take me off your damn list. Okay, and I do, but somehow they get back, so I apologize. I do try to do that if you don't want it. There's a lot of people, we exchange with a lot of clubs, and we exchange with a lot of people outside the state, so I don't know how to match it up anymore. So, and somebody this month stripped the events page out, and they sent it, and those people forwarded it, and those people forwarded it, and then like 10 copies came back, and we got like 10 more groups that say, we want a copy of your newsletter, so we're going to get that out. But somehow I got to match this up, and I apologize if you get multiple copies. I'm trying to fix that, but it's a real pain to deal with this. So,
Thank you, Don. Don did a really great job. Looks professional. My name's Sam Poindexter, and I4TG. I had an altercation. Got my name tag. We usually introduce ourselves, give your name and call sign. We'll start with
Don, WS4NC.
Harlan, W1HRC.
Brian, KN4R.
Mike, W4LKN. Ron, W4UDB.
Mary, KM4WPO.
Bob, W3ABB.
David, KC4X.
Jim, W4UX.
Mark, KN4TUK.
Michael, K4LD.
Logan, KN4MGR.
Jeff, KK4MOB.
Neil, WD4LSS.
Andrew, KN4GCB.
Bain, KC4WSK.
Steve, WA3RTC, with my buddy Rick, who doesn't have a call yet.
Oh, Rick.
KB4WJA, Mike. Harold, N4HER.
Doc, WB4QIZ.
David, W4OIL. Bruce, WB4QCM.
Brian, N4UEZ.
Jim, and I have a new call, NA4J.
Chris, KW4BK.
George, N4ROT.
Margie, N4ZKE. Marsha, NC4MT.
Bruce, AD4EET.
Brent, and I'm virtual.
Daryl, N5WK.
Gary, WA4VMC. Mike, W4MAB. Dave, WA4MKK. John, KN4R.
Okay.
Doug, W4STH.
Stacy, W1LR.
JD4JWU.
Okay, this is a big crowd. Appreciate everybody braving the weather tonight. I've got a couple of announcements. David wants to make sure we know about the HD8M Galapagos D-Expedition, 160 through 10 meters, single sideband CW FT8, hot sound mode, February 27th through March 6th. It's something to try and obtain. It's good. And just see hd8m.com for everything you need to know. Also in the North Carolina QSO party this month, 24th. So some people like contesting, some do not. There will be a literal sea of Tar Heel voices on 20 meters on the 24th of February. The business meeting is a week from tonight. 66 pizza. We eat at 6:15 or 6:30.
And we have
our meeting. Everybody in the club is welcome to attend. Next month is Skywarn,
our two-year
recertification.
I know a couple of times the National Weather Service has sent me an email and they'll say, go out and measure how much snow you have, and send that in, and I use their application MPing, and it's pretty neat to report the weather and see what your neighbors are reporting and what's going on elsewhere. I wanted to announce Daryl has been doing field day for us for a couple of years and did a really great job. This year, Daryl wants to relinquish those responsibilities and let someone else have a turn. Also, I found out during the Hamfest that who I thought was Hamfest chairman really wasn't. So with all that said, I've appointed David Schoaf to be Hamfest chairman for 2019. And I think Steve Patterson, although Steve doesn't know it yet, Steve is going to be helping. Yeah, right. And then I appointed Henry Heidman to be the field day chairman. Henry's not here tonight, but I can guarantee you that if Henry is in charge, we'll probably be in first place again this year, although that's not, what we're there for. Okay. Kent is sick tonight. He's not here. Kent says we've got $4,667 in the treasury, and he needs to pay Dale $500 or $600 for a repeater. So we're still plus $4,000 in the treasury. And I've seen a couple of people pay dues tonight. Kent's not here, but you can pay Stacy if anybody else wants to pay their dues. Harlan is going to give us an Aries update.
Evening, folks. A couple of things. This Saturday is the EOC net controller course right here in this room, 8:30 in the morning till 4:30 in the afternoon. We promise you'll get a lunch break. This course it's a locally generated course, but it's one designed for those folks that will work out of an EOC as a net controller. It is a course to Forsyth County Emergency Management. We set it up, but it's based on the DHS Oxcom program, which is what North Carolina State follows now. And so we have got that program in here. That's what we're doing. The other thing we've got coming up is in April. We actually have two requests for public service event assistance. One is at Hanging Rock State Park. They'd like to have us put about a half a dozen people or so up there to support a 400 to 600 hiker charity event. The folks that go in the field will have to be able to hike back. I've only got one spot. I can have you taken back by ATV. Everybody else will have to hike back, and it'll be anywhere from about a mile to 3.5 miles back into where you position. The second event is right here in Winston-Salem with the MS folks. They have I think it's either an 8 or 10 K walk that they're doing, and they would like a SAG vehicle and a radio operator back at the start-finish line. And that's on April 6th. Then April 27th, similar thing for the MS folks. So we'd like to support them if we can as well. There's a lot of training available. On the NC terms, you can take almost any training out there is open to you. A lot of it will be put on a wait list. I'll get notified, and I just put an indication of yes, let them take the course, and you'd be accepted as long as there's room. So we need to step up. Real quick, I've got a presentation which we'll give in a couple of months, but I just want to say the state's pushing a lot of stuff out to us that as amateurs, if we want to stay viable and we want to continue to do the things we do and be there for emergencies, we're going to have to do the training. It's just being driven by the state, and they write it into their comp plan, they write the training, and we just have to follow along. Also, there's new IDs coming out, so the orange cards eventually will go away. You'll have a new ID card. And that also is, again, state driven. That's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you, Harlan. Next, Dale is going to give us our repeater and testing update.
You need to stand in one box, or you're right there. Right here, right where you can't see it. That's perfect. Okay. Good evening, everybody. The testing, we had one of the very unusual things tonight. We had 0 people, but we were blessed with, I think, I lost count, 4 or 5 of our VEs, plus 2 or 3 other potential new VEs coming in, not including Mike, who's starting up Mike W4MEV. So we appreciate all their help. We did have one person that was going to take the test, but he wanted to take all 3 at once, so he took it at Greensboro. I don't have his call yet, but I dealt with him via email, so we'll probably have more folks next month. Okay, the key thing for testing to understand, we had the shutdown last time, which delayed the test results a little bit of time, but the FCC caught up, and with their core system, to be able to handle licensing, they made a change. Just got an email a couple days ago. It said very soon, probably March 1st, that people coming in testing, instead of just filling out and putting their TIN in there, they can't say the words Social Security number. It's illegal to use that as an identification number, so they call it TIN. They'll no longer be able to use a TIN. They need to go, new people need to come in, and existing people, if you don't already have or know your FRN, Federal Registration Number, get that first. Then you need to go to the core system, establish with your FRN a user ID and user account. Once that's done, then you can go ahead and take your test. I don't know if the FCC is going to kick back the FCC 605 forms yet or not. We're going to ask the folks to do that. I'll make a write-up for the newsletter, and there's even a video link, which I haven't seen yet, which is supposed to show you how easy it is to do. Remember, it's made by the government, so stay tuned. Again, thanks for being easy to get folks tested. Now on the repeaters, all 3 repeaters are up and operating, maybe not in optimum shape. We reported last month that we want to get the fusion systems in at the hospital, but the creeping crud has gone around, and most of the FARTS, Forsyth Amateur Radio Technical Society, that installs the repeaters, we're down with sickness. So we're going to see if we could start up again, probably starting this week. Instead of having a priority on the fusion repeaters, we need to get with some of the folks afterwards that might be available this week to maybe go up to 4.7 and have some new opportunities. So other than that, just stay tuned. If you have any suggestions, or it's working great, or it's not working great, feel free to drop me an email. We'll see how that goes. Again, a pleasant reminder for the Fusion system. It's a digital system. It's automatic. So if you have your analog, your normal radios on, you're not familiar how to use your tone code or CTCSS, forget what else they call it. Look and dig out your manual if you can find it, or on the internet, and try to turn that on. Because the repeaters will transmit 100 hertz tone. It'll be very low level, you can't hear it. But if somebody comes in digital, so you won't hear the buzz, they'll squelch your receiver. Then somebody comes in analog, they'll unsquelch it. So you won't hear an unnecessary buzz once those things start running and say, what in the world is happening to repeaters? That's what's happening. So, any questions at this point? Okay, thank you.
Dale, talking about the government reminded me, I neglected to mention that the Skywarn president dependent upon not having a government shutdown. And if we have a government shutdown, then Harlem will have that slot. Tonight we have Brian Harrison here, who did the presentation on Amelia Earhart. If you were here for that, it was really great, and we're glad to welcome him back tonight to present to us about the FCC's activities in World War II. Right?
Okay, thanks, appreciate it. How many people had relatives in World War II? Here you go, almost everybody. How many people's dog was in World War II? Okay, my grandmother's dog was actually spotted on a porch, and it's German Shepherd, and the major that walked by came from the airfield and said, "Hey, the Army Air Corps needs that dog." And so my grandmother said, "Well, we've already got my oldest son in the Army Air Corps, and my other son is going in the Navy here shortly, so you can get my dog too." And we actually got it back in early 90s. His name was Speed. He came back in early 45 by train in a big crate that said U.S. Army dog, and I've got a picture to prove it. He had discharge papers, but nobody in the family can find them anymore. But the handler came with him, and as soon as they got him off the train, the handler said, "You can't have him right now, I've got to detrain him for 2 weeks." And my grandmother said, "You're not detraining my dog. Speed, get in the car." And he jumped right in. And off they went. No, I'm not going to. No, you can have my voice. Anyway, I was telling somebody earlier, until I found a particular radio and researched it, I didn't know that the FCC had an enforcement division. But this is all about the enforcement division in World War II. My friend he was a CV operator. Apparently he was running too much power, and so Uncle Charlie showed up at his house one day and said, "Do you want to lose your license or lose your radio?" And he said, "Let me help you carry the radio to the car." So anyway. So this is me. I'm a radio collector. I get on the air too, but I just like uncommon radios. Radios that I've never seen before, radios that have a good story, radios that were used in a historical context, any picture with a radio in it. I just love those, and so I was at Shelby Ham Fest back in 2014, and a friend of mine came up and said, "Hey, do you want a spy receiver?" And I was thinking, "Yeah, I guess I do." And I didn't have one. And he dragged me over in front of this box that had been on eBay twice with an asking price of $75 and no takers. So Al from Newbern brought it up here, and of course I was glad to pay him $75, even though it just looked like a piece of test gear. Okay, but I went back and started researching on the internet, and I finally got one hit, and there was one in a museum in Belgium, and it was used by the OSS, which is the Office of Strategic Services, except this was in a Naugahyde case, and mine was in a wooden case, but besides that, it looked pretty good. And this was the only information that was available for that radio. And if you can read up there, it's as little as known about this radio, and it looks like it was made in a basement and had a normal parts, and all that's true, okay? And we'll come back to that in a bit. But that led me to a website that's called The History of the Radio Intelligence Division Before and During World War II, and a fellow named George Sterling, who was an FCC commissioner. In fact, he was the only ham to ever be an FCC commissioner, because usually they're just politically assigned. But he was the real deal. Okay? And if you would, hold that book up. No, the one that's printed out. So basically, that website is an entire book. It's like 350 pages of his notes during World War II, all the intrigue, catching lots of spies, working with different governments. I mean, it's really good, and it's all free. It's all out there, and it was put on there by a fellow named Dan Flanagan, who now has the call W3DF, and that was one of George Sterling's calls. He had W1AE and W3DF, and DF for direction finding. That's pretty cool. So now, if you hold up the older books, so you've seen the ARRL radio manuals and that kind of thing. Well, George Sterling wrote the book before all that. In fact, here's 3 radio manuals that he wrote or co-wrote. And okay, sorry. So these are pretty scarce. They're very, very good, especially if you're looking for information about interesting real communications receivers of the late 20s and the 30s and even into the 40s.
He was an old ship radio operator. He was ambidextrous. It was a real good thing in that you could send with one hand and write up. He was school. He was FCC back in the 30s, when pretty much all they used to do was check on transmitters on ships mostly, and go check on the AM broadcast transmitters. They really didn't have any directing capability, but on the arrival, we started ships, we started the FCC, and being a ham during this period was a really, really good thing. The Navy wanted you, the Army wanted you, the civilians, the civil service wanted you, the FCC wanted you, and the wasn't bad. So here in June 1940 QST, here's an ad talking about radios. So if you were pretty good and had a code speed of 15 to 25 words a minute, knew your stuff, you could get a pretty good job. Now, the FCC, the Radio Intelligence Division, started out being called the National Defense Operations Group, and then it went to the Radio Intelligence Division. But here's some of the pays that you could, if you were just a radio operator, $1,800 a year, and assistant monitoring officer, 24, and up to 32. And I forget how much, a regular person made during that time, but these were pretty good pay, I think. Certainly better than being in the service. Now, the other thing is we had something like 51,000 hams just in the United States, and probably at least that many outside of the United States. So there are a lot of people banging away on the bands. But it was decided in June of 1940 that United States hams could not talk to any other international ham. And the reason they were worried about flow of information out of the country. So and you'll see that in the video, a ham scene where the fella gets told that he can't talk to his buddy in Brazil anymore, okay? And now W1AW started code practice in June 1940 to help train more hams for the war effort. And I didn't know that, so I thought they'd just always been doing it. But they actually started it for the war. And then September 1940, the FCC is being expanded, and all licensed hams had to submit a photo, fingerprints, and all sorts of things, just so that everybody was registered. So what happens on December 7th? We have war. On December 8th, hams can no longer transmit, period. They can receive, but they can't transmit. Now, in World War I, when we got involved with that, hams could not transmit, they could not receive, and they had to dismantle their station and take the antenna down. So actually, World War II wasn't that bad because you could still use your receiver if you wanted to, okay? Unless you donated it for the effort. And there was a lot of things that got donated, binoculars and radios, and because they just had an immediate shortage and a huge need. Now, anything under 56 megacycles was prohibited in terms of transmitting. And again, lots of hams started going into the military right after Pearl Harbor. Now, there was something called the War Emergency Radio Service, or WERS, and the ARRL pushed this through because we didn't have anything. And so the civil defense folks, the Aries folks of the day, didn't have anything to work with. So they were given power capabilities of 2.5 meters, 1.25 meters, and for air raid and natural disaster. And communities were licensed, or organizations were licensed, and then you'd have like WJZX-1, WJZX-2 for every transmitter that that group had. And most of these were low-powered homebrew rigs. Now, you've probably seen some of these show up on Hamfest. Here's an example of a commercially made 2.5 meter rig. Okay, it's an Abbott TR. A friend of mine got this in a pile of stuff given to him recently to have that picture. I've seen these things for years and just kind of scratched my head and said, you know, what use is this? Well, during the war, this was hot stuff. Was woefully unprepared. The Navy didn't have enough. They were responsible for spies, but they didn't have the expertise. So RID immediately was thrown into the, said, hey, we've got to have all this coverage and protect us. And every time somebody heard a message on the shortwave bands, people were just freaking out. And there was cases where American ships were being, signals from American ships were being described as being Japanese, especially on the West Coast. So it was a very frantic time. So here's a monitoring officer in action. How many Hammerlin collectors do we have? I mean, Hallicrafters collectors do we have in here? Anybody? Anybody got a Hallicrafters receiver? Oh, thank you. What do you got? Okay. Hold up that one underneath the gavel, if you would. So, Hallicrafters had a thing with the government. They probably sold more communications equipment to our company, our government, and foreign governments during World War II. It was really a great time for them. And so here we have the responsible for tuning through all the frequencies over and over and over. Okay, they didn't have any band adapters, and they didn't have any band scopes. How many people have an IC 7300? There you go, or better, or Flex, or any of those things. Well, there was none of that stuff back then. Okay, you just sat there and spun it out back and forth, changed bands and did it again. So they also had to document because they needed a basis. If somebody was abroad doing shortwave broadcasting for whatever reasons, they needed to know who that was. They had to share the documentation with the military and the FBI. They had to train people in the States and also in some foreign countries as well. But the big thing is they had to identify all signals. Not all signals were in international Morse either. For example, the Japanese used their own Morse code set called kanji, and a lot of the guys that they hired at the RID were old Far East ship guys who knew kanji. So that was a big help when the people started trying to figure out what was being said. So they went from 7 sites across the United States, to over 100 locations, including Alaska, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico. Washington, D.C., of course, was the center. They monitored all the frequencies, but they also started doing direction finding, and they also added mobile surveillance capability. And these started facilities, so you couldn't get anywhere close to them. Anybody have a Hudson automobile, or had one? Okay. So here's a map of the monitoring stations, and you can see some of them. I think like this one. There's Aries that work. They all work with each other, and it all centered up in Washington, D.C. So direction finding information. If you look at some of these sites, some of these might ring a bell. Powder. Said the best way to kill a hobby is to do it full
time.
And I'm sure that probably even though they had good stuff to play with. And then they had the secondary monitoring stations. So, and this one up here in the corner, they really knew their stuff. They had a place called Chop Mist Hill in Scituate, Rhode Island. This was supposedly the best listening post we had as a country during World War II. The site at least once. They set up all these antennas, rhombics, every couple of degrees, and then they found that it wasn't any good, so they moved like 2 miles farther over, and it worked perfectly. In fact, Africa, even though he was using low-powered stuff, they copied a lot of it. We were feeding the Brits information.
And they helped track down a lot of spies. They helped a lot of. It turned out one of the most significant things that the FCC did in World War II was help lost aircraft, because they were always getting lost. So Chop Mist Hill had 183 acres, 80,000 feet of wire. So that's a pretty good field day. I have never used a rhombic. I've never received a rhombic. I've got a friend of mine up in the mountains that has beverage on the ground. He has them in 4 directions, and he mainly uses them for AM broadcast DXing. But he says it's wonderful. So I can imagine rhombics are even better. And in fact, rhombics are so good. They had a listening post in California when they were bombing Japan. They would null out the local AM broadcast stations, and they'd point the rhombics to Japan, and they could listen to their AM broadcast stations in real time as the bombings were going on, so they knew how effective the bombing was. Not too shabby. So. Now, once war started, the Hawaiian Islands, which wasn't even a state yet, became the Western Front, okay? And so all of a sudden, a whole big group of the RID guys were sent to the Hawaiian Islands to set up a number of monitoring stations, because the Navy was just so worried about California being attacked and Hawaii being attacked. It was a 2-year field day for these guys, okay? And then you start seeing with some of the famous George Sterling, W3D, Prose Walker was head of the Hawaiian, all the listening posts. Charlie Ellert was the head of engineering for the RID, and some other folks. So here's a group of them in Hawaii when they first arrived, and I wish there was a way I could write down all of their calls, okay? But they said at least 80% of these guys were hams. So now I'll bet you it's even a higher percentage with this particular group. So here's Prose Walker on the left. He's that over all the Hawaiian Island listening post, and then Ellert. And later in Baltimore, he and somebody else, he and Con had a radio supply business in the 50s and 60s, so they became partners. Punch Bowl, was later a big memorial cemetery there, but before that they used it as a listening post, and that's George Sterling on the left, and then his technical guy on the right. They even went to Alaska, okay, and they said the Japanese couldn't find us there because we were always covered by snow. So, pretty tough duty, and they always did this. The Army was the ones that asked them to go to Alaska, and the Navy was the one that asked them to go to Hawaii. So the big thing was they had to identify and eliminate clandestine stations. And this might just be some ham that didn't really like the rules and said, hey, I'm going to go fire up my transmitter or go tune it up or something. So, but they were asked by a lot of foreign governments. South America specifically had a lot of spies down there. And so they sent a whole bunch of RID folks down to South America to clean out the spies. And here's a whole group of them getting ready to leave to head down to South America. So they were all over the place. So two of the key suppliers of the RID were Hallicrafters and Hudson, okay? And SX-28 was the workhorse up in the top left-hand corner. For VHF and UHF, it was the S-27 and S-28 receivers. And then they used the HT6 transmitters, the HT9 transmitters, which was a smaller, let's see, which one's smaller? That's 25 watts. So they used the one on the bottom left in the mobile bands to talk back to base, to get their instructions. And they also used an SX-25, which is a smaller receiver than the SX-28 for that radio link as well. So the SX-28 was the primary workhorse, and it's a very heavy receiver, quite a bear to restore if you. They also had they had to have some way of telling exactly what frequency they were on. So Hallicrafters made a frequency standard, and they also had a way of splitting. You think in terms of single sidebands, it's no big deal now. Upper sideband, lower sideband. But back in the AM days, it was a novel idea to be able to null out the carrier, null out one of the sidebands, so that you could just listen to either the lower one or the upper one, because it didn't take as much spectrum, so you could usually hear a little bit better. And that was a trick they used a lot too. So that we've already kind of talked about that. A lot of the equipment that was made specifically for the FCC has data tags that say that. And so this is an SX-28 that says manufactured for the FCC. This is the higher frequency S-27, same deal. And the FCC they were the ones that said, hey, we need a way of adjusting the S meter to 0 from the outside case. So they actually went back to Hallicraft and said, we want this in the product, and they added that in the product. So that's why that's there. Here's another one. This receiver is actually owned by the fellow who publishes that big website with the 350 pages. He's restoring that right now. So I talked about the rhombics. Look at all the wires here. It's been a lot of fun. They had a lot of other specialized gear as well. They had paper disc recorders. They had wax cylinder recorders. They had a machine that would transcribe Morse code at any speed, up to 500 words a minute, so that they could go back and look at it later. They had a special version of the SX-28 that had a sideband slicer, so you could slice off one band spread, one sideband if you wanted to. And they also had this thing called the SSR-201, which they called the watchdog receiver. And that's what I found at Shelby. Okay. But so they had different groups. One was the Foreign Broadcast Intelligence Service, or FBIS. So they listened to all the enemy propaganda broadcasts and recorded them and flew all the contents to Washington every day and they were analyzed. We got a lot of POW information, for example, off those broadcasts. There's actually a book about that. It's not FCC specific, but it's called Radio Heroes. So during the war, a lot of people would just listen to the shortwave, and if they heard reference to somebody, a POW, in a certain town, they'd write a letter, and they'd say, "Hey, I heard, and he said he's okay," and people really remember that, and that's what that book's up about. And they're recording on that paper cylinder there, disc. So here's the guys out of the monitoring stations. They're cruising the ether, which just means they're just going back and forth on bands all day long, okay? Here's the ink recorder recording the CW. Here's the CW being transcribed back to paper so that somebody can go back and analyze that, decode it if it's coded, that type of thing. Now, this is the part that really gets me excited, the high frequency direction finding, and or skywave, okay? This is the stuff that's bouncing in the ionosphere, coming back down. So at many of their sites, they had 2 of these. They're made all of wood. They're made by pegs, wooden pegs, no metal. They have 2 of them. One's powered by AC, one's powered by DC, and each one of them has a link back to, it's either a radio link or a telephone link or a radio teletype link back to the primary or back to Washington, D.C., depending on what type of site it is. And that spins around, and that's basically 2 vertical dipoles. And you'll see them in the video. They really make a cool noise. I don't know where they got that noise at, but it's cool. And here we are inside one of them, SX28, frequency standard back there. He's tuning for an oral null, basically, and figuring out where it is. It's the hand call there. So, one is good, but once you get 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, then you can get very, within a degree or maybe a half a degree of where the transmitter is. But it takes a lot of coordination in terms of, you need to listen on this frequency right now type of thing. Of course, we have the internet now that could conceivably do all that for us. The RID was constantly being tested by the Army, by the Navy, by the FBI. People would set up transmitters and just start firing them up and start sending some Morse code and see how long it took before they got identified. And they did it at the Pentagon once. They threw out a wire, started keying, and Situate, Rhode Island reported them within 7 minutes. Pretty good. They took a Navy boat out in the Gulf of Mexico and started doing the same thing. And I think it took, how long did it take? 20 minutes. And here's what and these were up to 2,600 miles away from the direction finding sites that were interpolating that. So you can see, you're getting pretty close. So if somebody went down there, chances are they'd find that boat. And then you had your Hudson automobiles loaded with radio gear, okay? And so they were doing ground labor. So they were directed to go to a certain place, a certain part of town, and so they would get close, and then they had some handheld devices that would help them get closer, okay? And they always had a radio link back to somebody to get directions, lots of batteries, and multi-vibrators. The call book was one of their favorite things because, who likes transmitters, okay? Who sets up antennas? They were always looking for antennas, and they always were referring to the call books because a lot of times the source of the interference or the source of the noise that they were expecting was that ham radio operator. I guess they didn't have CBs there, So anyway. But, I still do this. I still drive around and look for antennas, You just don't see them as much as you used to. The call book was very, very significant. So here we are in a Hudson sedan. We've got a driver up here, and it's pretty happy. And then you've got the back seat just loaded for bear. And the loop was removable. They just put it up there when they needed it. And They could tune anywhere from 75 kc to 300 megs. So, no air conditioning. Okay. And you can see some of the recording. There's your, your dictaphone-like device there, and there's your loop control there. Now, once they got close, they had a couple. Here's one. I used to have one of these, but a collector offered me too much money for it, so I sold it to him. But underneath this little flap right here is actually the volume control. So you can sit there and hold it. It's heavy, but you can sit there and control the volume, and you just have wires going up here to an earphone. Okay, and but it had lead acid batteries in it, by the way. But here's your tune. It tuned from 100 kc to 60 megs. Okay, and you could use a sense antenna. There's a right here. If you wanted to find the direction, basically you just do like this with it until you figure out kind of which way you should go. If you had and it could be this way or it could be this way, but if you had a sense antenna, if it's dark or something, it'll tell you that it's this way and not that way. And that's where the sense antenna goes. Look, it's right in that little hole right there. But, and you can see the loop. The loop's underneath this flap here. And then when they got really, really close, there was a handheld meter they called a snifter. And some British astronomer came up with that name. I don't know. But Charles Eller, who was the head technical, this was his creation. You'll see one of those in the video. So, and I mentioned this. This is the last pre-war call book, and I had one, but I just couldn't find it, so I brought the later one here. But this was good as gold. They loved these because they found a lot of sources of So can you imagine sitting there all day long, spinning the dial, changing the band, spinning the dial? I mean, that's pretty much what you had to do, right? I mean, up until World War II, there was no pan adapter, okay? But a French ham, Marcel Wallace, actually invented the panoramic display, or at least was one of the guys who patented it, and he started Panoramic Radio Corporation. And the RID was one of the first adopters of this technology, okay? Here is Dr. Marcel Wallace with one of his other spectrograph, he called it, and it would show you 100 kc of the band. So that's pretty good, but you still, there's a lot of spectrum between 0 and 30 megs, say, or even maybe 35 or 40 megs. And but these were nice because you could do signal analysis. You could maybe identify the transmitter. Was this the same transmitter I heard on this band yesterday? Does it have the same characteristics? Is it the same operator? I mean, if you got a distinctive sound, if so, maybe that would give you another piece of information. How to monitor all HF frequencies at once, right? I mean, the issue is you could miss the transmission. The pan adapter only shows you this much. And so we needed specialized equipment. I read a book recently that said the Germans in Paris had pan adapters, 100 kc pan adapters, hooked up to 300 receivers in one building. Each one with a pan adapter, each one watching 100 kc. And I don't know how many operators watched how many receivers, and I do not have a picture of that, but I've asked like 10 collectors. And so that was the way they tried it, and I'm sure that was pretty good. They say that if you transmitted, and you transmitted longer than 15 minutes, pretty much you were going to get a call. So what the RID did is said, hey, we need something that would pick up all frequencies. A single box that'll pick up if anybody transmits in the near vicinity, this thing's going to go off. It's going to tell me somebody's transmitting. Because again, we've quieted the ether, right? We've got a lot of people off the bands, and we need to know if anybody transmits, we need to know why they're transmitting, okay? So they came up with an aperiodic receiver design. And that's what I found at Shelby, okay? And it does pick up 50 kc to 60 megs all at once. And it all, how sensitive it is depends on how long a piece of wire you put on it. And they would use these outside the German embassy. They would use these outside concentration camps to see if somebody was in there with their diathermy machine trying to make contact with the outside world. Anywhere that they thought somebody might transmit, they'd park a vehicle out there with one of these watchdog receivers. And then they could lay back. They wouldn't have to sit there and spin the dial. They could just sit back until this thing went off. Once it went off, it started recording, and then they could go over to the SX28 and try to figure out what frequency it was. So it was a pretty nice little system. And these were built in the basement of a ham house in Baltimore. Okay, and that was Manuel Kahn, W3ZK, who was a friend of Charles Eller. And this is interesting because all the technicians actually worked at local broadcast stations, and at night they would come over to his basement and build this stuff for the RID. And he says, you just imagine how the neighbors thought, because again, we're coming into the house at all times of night. So, and here's QSL Collector had a copy of Manuel Kahn's card. And so they started putting these to great use immediately. They had them in place when Pearl Harbor happened. They had them in D.C. And the first, they heard signal, and it turned out it was coming from the German embassy. Okay, the German embassy had been told, you can be here, but you just can't transmit. And they transmitted. So it gave them, and they tracked them down using mobile vehicles, but they used the watchdog receivers to first trigger, to give them early warning, so to speak. And as a result, they were able to go into to stop the German embassy from transmitting for the rest of the war. And after the war, they went in there and saw what kind of equipment they had there. So, the one I had came from a fellow in New Bern. It turns out there was an RID team down in New Bern, North Carolina, and they were driving the coast for several months, listening for any communications between land and U-boats, because that was a huge fear going on. And they were actually staying in someone's house, Mr. Ives in New Bern, and this is where mine was found. So my guess is they left it behind, or somebody snatched it, or something. So. And one of the biggest things the RID did during World War II was save aircraft. And so they get a call from somebody saying, hey, we've got an aircraft in distress, and it's, we've tried everything we can. And so they just have them send modes, which is just basically da, 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 right? Just, it's the same, it's almost the same as holding down the key, but if you hold down the key, you burn out the transmitter with the dynamo. So this is kind of like long dashes. And then they would take readings from all the different locations and tell them where they were at, give them a heading, and hopefully it would be a happy ending down here where the plane's safe. So the scorecard, during the war, they checked out some 9,000 signals. They silenced a whole bunch of unlicensed stations. They rounded up about 200 spies. They saved over 600 military aircraft and all those lives that were involved with that. So George Sterling was given a spy set from South America, and here it is here. And one of the mysteries is no one knows where this set ended up. A friend of mine on eBay found this little transmitter, which is a German agent spy transmitter, HF, on eBay. Nobody knew what it was, so I think he paid $25 for it. And I eventually talked him out of it, and I had to pay a whole lot more than $25. But anyway, yeah. And I've had many accusations with Joel with him using that transmitter. It has got the worst signal, the most distinctive signal it's real wispy and light and chirpy. And, you know, I don't care if you had 10,000 hams on the band. If this guy fired up, you could immediately go to it. So that was a bad choice on the Germans' part. Now, I wanted to mention another group that might not be RID related, but one of the things I've been coming up with lately are German and Japanese radio items that have some paint on them right here. And it says EEIS and it has a number. Well, EEIS, I've learned, stands for the Enemy Equipment Information Service. So these are captured pieces of equipment that were taken to Washington, D.C., analyzed and written up, and the information provided our troops. This is a German 75-watt transmitter, which was the backup transmitter that U-boats had, but they also used them on the ground. This one came in North Africa colors, so it was captured. And here's the paint job. It says EEIS 1A1, 1A2. I have found very little information about this. I'm going to have to go to the National Archives, but I will do that. Here's something I just bought today off eBay. It's a Japanese, much to the chagrin of my wife, by the way. It's a Japanese radio direction finding loop. Now, it was only good from 30 to 1,000 kilocycles. Okay? So why an Army guy, this is Army Brown, so what the Army was doing with this, I don't know. My guess it was just a piece of obsolete, you know, probably designed in 1932 and totally useless for the war. But anyway, I'm the new owner. Yeah. But it does have EEIS so and so on it, and that's pretty cool. And there's I have another piece of generator on my website as well. So further reading, okay, you've got this big long document right over here that you can read for free. It should be a book. I told the author, I said, you need to charge for this and give the money to charity. He said, nope, it's free and it's on the web. So it's a big PDF that you can download it. It's really good reading. There's an article about the hams and the RID in the QST October 1944. There's also a WERS one tube transmitter in that issue. You see right there. So, and there was also in the Antique Wireless Review, George Sterling had a number of his articles while he was living. I did an article in Electric Radio about the Watchdog receiver. And so all this kind of, you know, I get excited about the possibility of high frequency direction finding for hams. And I came across this a week or two ago. Some of these new boxes now have that capability, and they can be linked to the internet, and there's some software available. So it's going to be real interesting from here on out to see what we can do to kind of play with high frequency direction finding. So finally, you get to watch the video, okay? This video is pretty unique. It's copyrighted. It comes on this set of DVDs. It costs $17 on Amazon. It's not on YouTube. It's not on the internet for free. So you have to buy this set. It's called Petroleum Edition. The Ether. It came out in 1944. It was released in 1944, which is interesting. Was there TV in 1944? Okay. Where there was experimental TV, and the Zenith station in Chicago was like the center. And when you watch the video, when they get to the taxi cab scene, check out the name of the taxi cab. Okay. And so this video was the first TV film broadcast simultaneously over more than one station. Okay, and this was in April of 1944. 3 of them were actually networked, and then 2 they simulcasted with tape. So I didn't know that they. Here's the guy. You can see the real early cameras with the light bulbs here, that on the air cameras, and you can't really read this, but it talks about iconoscopes and all this early stuff that basically it all changed. And here's some early equipment, and here's some early equipment. And anyway, that's the DVD. Prime does not pay. It's got 5 DVDs full of these great old movies. You know, if you like cops and robbers and all that kind of stuff, it's a great. So that's it. So hold on. Let's get to the video.
W3 RTS calling TY2 UWV. W3 RTS calling TY2 UWV. Come in, please.
TY2 UWV, back to W3 RTS. Good evening, Philippe. You're putting in a strong signal here. TY2 UWV, W3 RTS.
Buonanotte, Alfredo.
It is good to hear your voice again. How is my pupil?
Muito bem, senor. Tenho estudado muito. Say, have you got time to give me another lesson?
Certainly. First, I want you to meet a little friend of mine, Bonita.
Sure. Bring her in.
Say hello to Senor, Bonita. Don't be bashful.
What is that, a cat?
Steve, cutest person kid you ever saw.
Quiet, Butch. Just a minute, Alfredo. I gotta get my dog out of here. Yes, Mother, coming.
She'll wake up the whole neighborhood.
Gee, I'm sorry. See, there's a cat down in Brazil.
Philip, this is Mr.
Back. Bill Beck. Hi.
He's from the government.
FCC. Radio Intelligence Division. FCC. Federal Communications Commission. That's right. Did you want to see me? Well, there's nothing wrong, is there?
Phyllis, why don't you let
Alfredo, excuse me just a minute. Thank you. W3 RTS calling TY2 UWV. Hello, Alfredo. I've got a visitor. Afraid I'll have to sign off until tomorrow.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, later in the week then.
Adio. W3 RTS off and clear with TY2 UWV.
Afraid you'll have to write him a letter, Philip.
What do you mean?
All amateurs are affected. There's to be no more transmitting out of the United States.
I don't get it. We're not at war with anyone.
No, we aren't. You've read of the part spies in Fifth Colonies have played in the fall of certain European countries. Well, they're trying to do the same thing here.
Is the FBI taking care of them?
Yes, they are doing a great job. But they don't specialize in radio. And today it's chiefly by radio that the enemies within a country hope to get their stolen information out of it. That's why the RID was born. The Radio Intelligence Division. It is our job to police the ether.
Hey, that's a pretty big job. You're sort of an FBI of the airwaves.
Well, you might put it like that. How old are you, Phil?
60. Almost 70.
You know, you could help the RID. Right here at home. Just keep cruising the spectrum. You hear any strange signals, report them to us.
You mean I'd be a RID man?
Well, not exactly, but that might come later. But you would be one of the invisible army of watchers helping to patrol the ether.
Oh, boy.
Today, as a result of such foresight, our country maintains a radio detection network second to none in the world. This unseen vigilance is helping to make the home front safer than at any time since the war began. At strategic points throughout the nation, numerous monitoring stations maintain a 24-hour alert, reporting to the Chief of the Radio Intelligence Division in Washington, D.C. From the secret files of RID headquarters comes a typical case of espionage, which, like many others, began when a monitoring station picked up a mysterious message. Automatic tape and disc recorders register the message. The direction finder is rotated until minimum signal strength reveals the direction of the unknown transmitter. Headquarters gets the flash. Bearings from this and other monitoring stations converge on a map. At the point of intersection or fix, the enemy station is spotted. The RID chief contacts the station nearest the fix. Instructions and voice code are transmitted.
21 XY, calling 22 XY.
And the cruising mobile unit receives the location of the fix.
21 XY, calling 22 XY.
22 XY, back to 21 XY.
17 R3, 9J8L, 9.1.
17QR3, 9J8L, 9.1.
Right.
Megacycles. 9J8L. Hey, that's over on the west side of town.
Yeah, between Hammond and Kingsley Avenues.
Hey, do you think it's big stuff?
Maybe. Not a sound on that frequency now.
Maybe. I've been an RID man 2 weeks now. When am I going to catch a spy?
Patient, Junior.
I've never seen a German spy. Sometimes to see one, but I can tell you what.
Quiet. They're sending again. Keep going. Loop's hitting to the right. Slow down. Stop.
Hey, there's an apartment house over here.
Yeah. The loop's pointing right at it. Got your snifter?
Oh yeah, you bet.
Come on.
Got me puzzled. It's not here.
They're still sending.
Hey, could our instruments be off?
No, we just haven't searched the right spot.
Huh.
So what's on the other side of this place?
Park? No. It's a cemetery.
Better go around and take a look.
Yeah.
Locked.
Climb the fence. Let's circle it first. Well, this is the last one.
Yeah.
Hey, it's open.
Well, go ahead. put that out. Sounding stronger. Late for a visit. I'll tag along. You cover the gate. But now go along, Junior. If I lose her, don't let her get away.
Here it is, Chief. In cipher, not in code. A complete transcript of everything that enemy station sent out yesterday.
Good.
How's Beck?
He never regained consciousness. One of our best men. I know about that convoy leaving Thursday.
Yes, but they don't know from what port. But they informed Berlin yesterday that they would have that knowledge today.
Well, that means, yes, here it is. Their last message. Abandoning station will transmit information tomorrow. Notify Undersea's fleet. We will attempt direct contact from 4 p.m. on. They'll probably have to use a less powerful transmitter. That subfleet must be heading west right now to get in receiving range.
It looks like the convoy will have to disband and reassemble somewhere else.
And lose weeks of precious time. To the enemy, that delay may be as valuable as a victory. No, it's up to us to keep that message from being sent.
Throughout the nation, the monitoring crews are alert, standing by for the enemy signal. Far out in the Atlantic, in the radio rooms of the German wolf pack, men are also waiting. Somewhere in the streets of the city, somewhere in the stream of traffic, the enemy is on the move. After hours of inaction, suddenly the signal comes through.
Got it. 240. Second again. Station 85 degrees.
Once more, the RID men make the fix.
The Yankees. They're jamming the wavelength.
Looks like we can't get through that barrage they're putting up.
Stick with it, we've got to get through. Watch out, Jerry. You don't want to break any laws.
Still on the alert, the RID men gradually locate the enemy transmitter.
They're still moving, but we've narrowed them down to 4 square miles. Area bounded by 8L, 8R, 6K.
19XY to 21XY.
21XY back to 19XY.
8L, 8R, 6K. Police, stand by to cooperate.
All cars, this is it. 8L, 8R, 6K.
8L, 8R, 6K. 8L, 8R, 6K.
We've got to search all cars coming out of that area.
Is he getting through?
What's the idea?
Take a look.
We're boxed in. Let's get out of this.
Wait. We'll be safe for a while, long enough to send that message. We can get through that ring. I think we can. Flap the antenna.
Go ahead, pull over. Okay, Sam, go ahead. Pull over to the curb.
I'll look him over.
That woman, stop her!
No, never.
I'm trying. I think I'm getting through.
Jamming has stopped. Exact latitude and longitude of the American convoy.
Submarine has acknowledged. Seemed mighty pleased, too.
I wonder if they'll still feel that way when they get to that position.
Well, they might enjoy coming up in the nest of our destroyers and bombers, but I doubt it.
Patrolling the ether, trapping the enemy within our borders, helping to protect America's home front. These are the men of the RID, harnessing radio to help fight the global war.
It's really a great video. I think I wish that was out the public domain because it's really good. And that's it. That's it. So, any questions? Oh, yes, sir, Harold.
I've read a lot about the crypto machines the Germans had, and Bletchley Park as far as what did we have?
We had something called Sigala, which was never broken during the war. It had twice as many rotors, it was a big black box, and they never broke it. So, but the British had various codes, and the Germans did break some of their codes early on and all that. So it was kind of tit for tat for a while, but then we finally overwhelmed them and had everything broken on both the Japanese and the Germans. We were reading their mail, and they weren't reading ours.
What was what did the Japanese have? Did they use the Enigma?
Well, they had a bunch of different codes. One was a diplomatic cipher called Purple, and there was this Japanese guy that was real friends with Hitler, and he would go like on tours of the Atlantic Wall, and he was he loved to write reports, and so he wrote reports and told us everything. And of course, we were copying all of it and reading it all. It was great. And same thing with the Japanese. I mean, we basically read their mail for the last year or two of the war, which really helped us a lot. We also, as far as ships, we sank a lot of ships in World War II. The Germans had the Japanese had a Maru code. They called their transport ships Marus, and they had to report where they would be at noon the next day, every day. There were many nights where every one of our submarines was working based on an intercept, and they knew, basically where this convoy or single ship would be, and so it really improved our chances of sinking them. And I think our American submarines sank something like 55% of all the Japanese shipping during the war. So.
Even though they did service for our allies, did we get to read much of their archives?
Who's that?
Soviets.
Yeah, as the war went on, I mean, yes, we read as much as we could, as early as we could, and supposedly they were reading ours, and they knew that we had the bomb when they met at Potsdam, because they were deciding how to split up Europe and all that, and Truman, went to Stalin and said, by the way, we have this bomb, and Stalin just kind of like, and it was because they knew about it, so, so anyway, it's good to read, it's good to have the technological advantage. Yeah.
What about radar? That was early on in the world. They had radar, but it wasn't on that many.
That's right. It was very, like the Japanese submarines, they used radar at about 130 megacycles, so it wasn't very good, plus their antennas weren't very high. Basically, the USS England, which was a destroyer escort, set a record. It sank 6 Japanese submarines in 11 days. And they had a picket line out in the ocean, and they just went right up the picket line, sank one, 30 miles later, they sank another, because they honed in on the radar, their air radar, which was running at 130 megacycles. And so they didn't have good radar. But there was 7 subs in that row. The one submarine guy that didn't get caught, he said, I didn't trust that radar, I turned it off. So, and of course, we had submetric radar, which was much higher in frequency, and it gave much better resolution. So we could actually fly over and look down and actually see the layout of the ground, or see a periscope at, a couple miles, whereas they were lucky to see a ship at 2 miles. And it was a British invention, but we mass produced it and made it better. Anything else? Okay, well, thanks a lot.
Thanks for another great presentation. That was great. Anybody have anything else tonight?
Motion to adjourn.
Have a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a second? Meeting adjourned.